Welcome to Season 2 of Outstanding Women Leaders, Witty and Wise Conversations. I'm your host, Katie L. Leeds, leadership and life coach by day, comedian and writer by night. I'm on a mission to have 100 million witty and wise conversations around the world. No more welcome to my TED Talks and Dear Abby advice friends. It's time to start having powerful conversations without being attached to an outcome or agenda for the person that you are creating space for in that moment. The rules for this conversation are simple. Nobody gets to be right. Nobody gets to be wrong. Everybody gets to be vulnerable. This conversation is exactly what it needs to be in this moment in time. We've asked our guests to join us via video to allow us to create authentic connection. Eyes are the window to the soul. Jen, you will be seen here. You will be heard here. There is space for you here. And for you too, listeners. And if you are tuning in today, if you love what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts or Podbean or YouTube and write us a little review at Outstanding Women Leaders. But enough about us. Jen, welcome. Jen Arbudo is an outstanding woman leader. She's strong. She's celebrating her 40th year here on Earth. She's an accomplished professional in the medical aesthetics industry with a strong business acumen, an infectious laugh, and an even bigger heart. Her passion for nonprofit and helping others is part of what drew me to Jen. Her nephew was diagnosed with ALD, and Jen has been a huge supporter of helping to fund research, hosting events in the city to raise money for the Aiden Jack Seeger Foundation. Their mission is to get the word out on newborn testing, to increase early detection, and also to help support and educate families along the way. Jen, thank you so much for joining us. You are an incredible owl. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today to participate and chat.
Yeah, Jen is a good friend of mine. She was on a previous group episode we had. I think, was it Bring Your Own Brain?
We were talking about grief, and that was like early on in the pandemic phase of life. And so there were so many different phases of grief at that time. And then we were just sharing personal info about our own experiences. So Thanks for having me
again. Yeah, thanks for coming on and having your own episode. You can catch her first episode, Bring Your Own Brain conversation, on our Facebook page at Outstanding Women Leaders. Today, we're going to kick off our witty and wise conversation, talking about being strong and what it means to be strong. And Jen, when you were on, for me, you were strong in the sense of when my mom died, like you had been there. There's not a lot of my friends who have lost a parent. And that grief happened early for you. And I'm remembering now when we recorded that conversation, it was the anniversary of my mom, also your dad's.
So such bizarre timing. I think it was literally the 15th year anniversary, and it doesn't always occur to you, when you're going down memory lane there. But yeah, I woke up the next morning and I said, wow, there must have been a reason why I had that conversation yesterday. So
yeah. And I know, so as two women who have grieved many things, including a loss of a parent, we often get this title of being a strong woman. What does it mean to you to be a strong woman? We're going through a pandemic, which, by the way, this is not my quote. This is Jen's quote, and I fucking love it. What does it mean to be strong? It's a fucking pandemic. I added the fucking.
I mean, I'm the oldest of 5 girls, had that experience at a really young age. I think that for me, being strong always just means sort of moving forward and not getting down in the dumps, and just trying to continue to be positive and continue to just move forward, and not get down on yourself, but just continue, right? And as I've gotten older now and just turned 40 and now experiencing this pandemic and tons of change, as I'm also going to be in a new position soon, I think I've had to look at that and the vulnerability of being strong, and what does that mean exactly? And to me, I think now it just means figuring a way, but then also challenging my own feelings and being able to accept feedback and having ups and downs and having a transition. I mean, it's impossible to continue just being strong all the time.
Oh, yeah. Is it impossible? I have questions. When I hear you talk about being strong, I'll always have questions. Um, I very much related to that for me as being my definition of strong as well. And I am just owning that definition. I think that that is resiliency. When you talk about, while it means you keep pushing through, it means you keep staying positive, it means that you just continue. Like, to me, that's resiliency. I'm incredibly resilient. You are incredibly resilient. I had a mental breakdown and bounced back on my own. Like, I am resilient. But bouncing back on my own didn't make me strong. In fact, it made my progress and my journey, I think, much more difficult. So when I think about times where people have looked at me and thought I was really strong, I see a much weaker version of me, because that version of me didn't know how to ask for help. And that version of me didn't know how to be vulnerable enough to ask for help.
I think I can relate to that too, because, if you're only thinking about being strong and continuing on that sort of vibe, then you're not allowing yourself to feel, you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you're not allowing yourself to even really be that positive, because you're just moving, you're not necessarily growing, right?
Yeah, I think you can end up in the fake it till you make it, which I embraced.
Right.
I think from a resiliency plan, it's a great plan. Be resilient. From a am I strong plan, no. Strong people can embrace their emotions and say, I am not gonna fake it today. And that vulnerable moment for me happened this December. So 2019. Maybe the pandemic was in US, maybe it wasn't, but it was on its way. And that for me ended up being an antidepressant, a 5 milligram pill that was living the SSR life, that allowed me to quiet some of the anxiety that was happening, and so that was my help, right? That was me really taking that first step into saying a strong woman accepts help. And it's amazing when a strong woman accepts just a tiny bit of help in the universe, how the universe is like, oh, do you want more? Here's this friend, and here's this man, and here's this. And is that vulnerability to take that first step has opened so many doors for me. So when I heard you say you can't be strong all the time,
I think the persona of being strong all the time.
Yeah. I think if you redefine strong for you as someone that is vulnerable enough and in touch with their emotions enough to ask for help when they need it, to know when they need to rest, like that is something that to me sounds very sustainable. And right. And the strong that we used to define in our 20s and I'm still in my 30s, but early 30s, right? Like that strength that we used to define, like that's strong man strength. Like most people don't want to live their life eating the amount of food that they need and training the amount that they need to train to be a strong man, right? And to be able to lift all the things because that muscle is so strong that they don't need anyone help to lift something. Most of us want to live that balance of that happy exercise where I have muscles so I can sit and stand and not get stuck. But I don't need to move cars. In fact, if this car gets stuck and I need to move it, I can ask some friends with a tow truck, right?
Absolutely. And I think too, it's just, it's having those moments and thinking to yourself, how can I continue to grow? How can I continue to get better and not be stuck? Because being strong sometimes can make you be stuck. And for me, especially with, I was with a company for 11 years that I loved, and I'm going through this transition. And although I'm excited about my next opportunity, it comes with a lot of it comes with a lot of feelings, and I think normal old Jen would just ignore some of those feelings, and I've had to really embrace them, and everyone's like, oh well, you just got a new job, so you should be, a certain way about it. And for me, it's scary. It's nerve-wracking. I'm going back into the workforce during a pandemic, and I'm going back into sales, and I haven't really flexed these muscles in a long time. And am I going to be good enough? Am I going to kill it like I'm known for? Things like that, keep me up at night. And I think seeking sort of support has not been something that I'm used to doing. And I've had to do it recently, and sort of owning who I'm becoming, and who I'm no longer, right? And so
yeah, it's interesting to hear you think of yourself as someone that doesn't normally seek support, because you do seek it when you need it, right? And so you're no stranger to life coaching.
true.
I like to call it leadership and life coaching. If you are getting good coaching, you're getting leadership skills along with it.
Yeah.
But you have done that. I think hiring a life coach is a big statement to the universe that you are strong enough to know that you need some extra help to get there.
I think what I meant by that was just support amongst friends and family and whatnot, because of my persona that I have with them, right? But going back to your point, I mean, 3 years ago, I was also going for a different job at the time, and I sought out this life coach, and to also help me work through some issues with a relationship that I was having at the time, to be able to sort of move on from that. And collectively, rather than spend 10 weeks together going through this whole program that she had, I asked her, would you mind if we did this in a weekend instead? Do you do that? Like, I'm happy to come to Greenwich and the whole thing. And we did. We really took the time over 3 days, and then continuously after that, to sort of help me transition and think from a different place. Think from a vulnerable place, but think from a place that will help me continue to grow and get me in the place that I wanted to be. And she really did help a lot. And I think it's a continuous thing. And that, that didn't fix me for life. That's something you have to go back to and reevaluate as
well. You're not broken. I have to say that. No one is broken. You are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole.
And I love the process. I mean, I am the oldest of five, 5 girls in my family, and we all go through different life experiences. And, it's just, I have my own experience. I'm in the city, and you're sort of taught, you come to New York City and you need to be this huge successful person. And, there's
expensive. You can't afford it. You aren't successful.
Exactly. There's a lot of pressure that comes with being strong, quote unquote strong, right?
Yeah, I had a man once tell me that it must be hard being surrounded by so many women that I'm friends with that are successful. And then there's me. He meant financially, I imagine, working at a nonprofit. But I was the only one there that was a CEO of a company. I was the only one there that owned my own business before.
Absolutely.
I was the only one there that sold a business. But I wasn't successful from the New York standard. So I definitely understand that pressure. And that, is my fuel. I love when a man tells me I can't do something. So fine, I'll make $1 million. And he can continue to brag about my favorite is when men in New York brag about their $200,000 salaries. Right? Like somehow they've made it, where my owls are making more, but also not telling anyone about it.
Right. Not unnecessary.
Right.
And monetary things don't necessarily mean that you're successful.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. When you think back, so 3 years ago,
yeah,
you did an intensive life coaching. Your life took a different path. As a result, right, you transformed. Is there anything that you didn't transform in 3 years that you would like to focus on the next 3?
Absolutely. I think my main thing is, and we've talked about this, is I tend to avoid tough conversations sometimes rather than necessarily getting into it with someone. I just avoid and continue on. And uh, that's something I would absolutely like to work more on, is having those tough conversations. So I've been flexing my muscles a little bit more so recently within my friend group, of just sort of holding my own and being accountable, but then also asking for that in return instead of giving, not getting it, avoiding and moving on. And I think that's, me just being vulnerable right now and
Yeah.
towards that.
I connect with you on the avoider muscle. Growing up in a child of an addict, we avoid. I'm the oldest and the only, but the oldest. So I think all the oldest in tend to be avoiders because we're peacemakers
Right.
amongst the family. And so it's interesting where people start to flex that muscle. I started to flex that muscle with my job. Instead of avoiding that I didn't have health insurance and avoiding that I didn't have a 401k, hence why I wasn't successful, I decided that I would flex that muscle. And then I flexed that muscle in dating relationships in January. So I flexed that muscle this year of, okay, that muscle worked over here. Let's try a different one. And friendships is like the final frontier for me. The people pleaser in me is still hanging on a little bit. But it's interesting where you start and where the last place it is that you avoid.
Well, I am trying not to avoid those conversations. And, everyone has their own style as well, and you have to feel comfortable in your own style. And
Yeah.
a style that works for another person won't necessarily work for you. So I think just sort of practicing having those conversations without necessarily being confrontational, and the whole crash and burn mentality of attachment that we
Yes, you know what? I take that back. I did flex my muscle with a friend. It crashed and burned. But it didn't. And that's the thing, is in that moment in time, that conversation was exactly what I needed it to be. I think sometimes what we need things to be is to fall away, to transform, to leave behind. Um, and so it's funny, I think about that. So December, I got my anti-anxiety, and I tried to flex my muscle of having a conversation before I took the medicine. And so you learn a little bit. But the takeaway for me also was that like the people that show up for you are the people that are ready to have those conversations. And so that's strength. Strength is letting things go. Shit, letting my marriage go was hard.
Yeah. I can absolutely relate with that. And I think just being open and when you have that conversation, to your point, just not holding on to, the, okay, well, we're done now. And, sometimes it's important to let go of that person in your life. But then sometimes I think those conversations can help you both be stronger to understand each other better. And so that your communication changes, so that you can move forward without sort of like
Yeah.
harboring the negative side. Right.
And those are witty and wise conversations.
Absolutely.
And I think although mine didn't go as witty and wise as I would have had it to go, right? The not being attached to the outcome, and recognizing that both people have to be witty and wise in that conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? Nobody gets to be right. Nobody gets to be wrong. Everybody gets to be vulnerable. And sometimes those are continuing conversations. Um,
Absolutely. I
and
mean,
what
my sisters and I will just like tell each other off, and then the next 5 minutes, would you like to go get lunch right now? And then you just sort of forget it. And that, I can handle most women conversations, and I have a lot of friendships. I have a lot of support. Obviously, we had that huge charity event in January where, over 100 people showed up for me and my family. And and I know I have that, right? But then sometimes I think I lean on the relationships with my sisters, and if you don't also have that mentality, then I'm like, ah, forget you, you know. That's not a mature approach. And I don't think
Right. You want the avoider and the people pleaser. Like, we set our beef. Let's avoid talking about the root of the issue.
totally.
Let's go get a sandwich. That was my childhood.
But it's all good, you know, and it's a growth thing. So me at 40 is certainly different than Jen at 30.
Yeah.
And
And I think it's important to say that neither one is better, right? It is what it is in that moment in time and space. And who Jen was 5 years ago is the person I met. And I am very grateful for who you are and who you continue to be. And the redefining of strength, I think, is so important for women and men, because men will also look at strength as not being vulnerable and not showing emotion. And this is an area that women can be much stronger at, right? And an area that men have an opportunity to really learn from. Hence the 100 million witty and wise conversations that we want to have.
Cool doesn't necessarily serve you so well in life.
Right. And for that too, for ladies, I mean, how many women are like, I'm a cool girl, you know, like I can hang with the guys, I'm a cool girl. And so witty and humor is interesting in relationships. I think about in conversations, and why I include it in my talking is men are not attracted to women who are funny. Like, it's number 3 on their list. Women, number 1 on their list are men who are funny. But on a long-term relationship, people that stay married, men, they rate sense of humor is the number 1 reason why they're still married after 30 years, even though they're not looking for it to start. And women are the opposite. Women are looking for it to start. It's their number 1. But then after 15 years, the jokes aren't as fucking funny anymore. Right? And men are using it to deflect from emotions. I've done this. Men are using it to not be held accountable for their bullshit sometimes. And also jokes they're like the heroin for the brain. Okay. And so I don't know a lot about heroin because I haven't done it, but my understanding is that once you do a little bit, you have to keep getting more. Like, you can't use the same needle and the same amount of heroin to reach the same high, is my understanding. And that is how jokes work, which is why I love meeting new people, because they will all laugh at my old jokes.
True.
And it's why men, I think, over time. And so wit is interesting to look at in relationships. I'm curious for you. Do you see humor coming up in your relationships at all, as a positive or a negative?
I mean, to your point, I think one of my number 1 things when I look at is do I find that person funny and relatable and in sort of keeping it fresh and keeping it fun, right? And I think I do have many zingers in there. I like to think I'm funny sometimes. Yeah, I don't know how that comes across always, especially at work. I mean, I think, you know, having humor and grace is important. If that's who you are and that's how you want to express yourself, as long as it's, you know, tasteful in that moment as well, right? Like,
there's the wisdom of
there's times to be funny and there are times to not try to be funny. And so I think finding that happy medium.
And what research tells us is that men after a while don't know when that is. And women after a while need to figure out where that is. And so my example I love to use for people is height of COVID. Dan's looking in the fridge for the fucking ketchup, and he's like, babe, where's the ketchup? And I don't even look up from my phone, and I'm like, it's a small fridge, fine, look for it. Like, and he burst out laughing, but also said, whoa, because my normal reaction, every girlfriend when they first start dating someone for 6 months reaction is, babe, it's on the door. Because where else do you fucking keep the ketchup, people? also there's 3 shelves in my fridge. It is a smaller than normal fridge. It's not that large. But that humor for him, like that diffused me saying what I was saying, which is stop asking me where shit is. Just fucking look for it. And it allowed us, when he was looking for a spice the other day, I only have a tiny cupboard that has any non-perishables. There's nowhere else this place is going to be. Babe, where's the cinnamon? Like, I don't know. It looks like a small cupboard, though. You'll figure it out. And, like, he got it. So, ladies, if you were annoyed at the man that's leaving his socks out, or you're annoyed at the man that isn't pulling his weight around here, humor sometimes can be a nice way to connect with a man to get him to do what you want. So is sex.
Well then.
Now that I'm off my soapbox, welcome back to this conversation, Jen. So in relationships, I am curious, because I am the avoider as well. What's that been like for you in flexing your muscle in romantic relationships?
That's a great question. Having some honest conversations to come are going to be crucial, I think, in my life to move forward, specifically with a person I've been seeing. And I think being able to communicate has always been something that's more challenging for me, because I typically am sort of that cool, strong, quote unquote, strong, cool girl. And then it comes to a point where the manifesting and sort of thinking about what needs to happen and be said, like, overtakes the actual situation. And I think I need to get better at communicating my feelings and my needs, and then also not compromising those needs, and just acting on those needs rather than necessarily saying. So if that makes any sense, it just a continuous communication of where I'm at and what my needs are. I think I'm working through that.
Yeah.
And then being able to just let go of relationships that don't necessarily serve me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been in amazing relationships in my life as well. And so, I think as you get older, you have different wants and needs, and not that I'm old, because I'm not. 40 is the new 30.
Absolutely.
And it's just communication and making sure that you're aligned, I think, with that person and what they're also looking for, and just having real vulnerable conversations. So I've been working towards that in my personal life, as well as all parts of my life. It's practice.
Yeah, same. It's why I found it interesting when you brought up friends is where you started, because it did spark for me. That's where I started as well. It's the low hanging, actually maybe my dad a little bit, and the lowest hanging fruit to start, where you have so much good history with friends that like, I can speak my truth and it's going to be okay. Gives you that courage, right? It builds up those neural pathways in your brain that says, now this thing. Right. That's what I found. Like, my romantic relationships, the last piece, where I had to say, and he challenges me and I challenge him back, but in a really witty and wise, look for it, it's a small fridge kind of way, where I can, that vulnerability piece to not be attached to the outcome. Absolutely. And very quick, the sooner that I was able to do that, like, the positive validation that came from that. Turns out, like, men that want to be with you, like, they'll figure it out. Like, you got to tell them, and they're going to do it, and they're going to do it really, really well. And that's always my relationship advice for women that are listening right now, that are married or in a relationship, is please stop telling your man what to do less of. Start telling him what you like him to do. Start praising him. Start telling him what you love. This is how humans work. We're going to do more of that. The positive emotions in your brain are super powerful, and those connections that you make to positive emotions and doing the thing that you want to do, for example, picking up laundry and putting it in the basket. I have a client that has this sticky problem with their husband. Like he right now, like, you know, the negative around picking up his socks is where he's at. Also, he needs to be a fucking adult and pick up his damn socks. I'm not suggesting that he shouldn't at all. So Jen, you are doing a lot of transitioning right now.
I'm doing tons of transitioning.
So 3 years ago, you were in the same space. What lessons do you have from your previous transition that you're applying now to make this transition smoother?
I would say that a few things. So number one is just trusting my gut as an adult. I mean, I think you can always seek other people's advice and support and all of that, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to trusting yourself and being decisive and having the courage to stand from a high place in thinking, not like a low depressing place, but you know, myself in my best place and making decisions that are going to serve me the best. And so I think it's just how you're sort of looking at things, but it's fine if you have opinions from other people, right? But I think sometimes the more you tell them, you're obviously telling them your side of, you know, the story and not necessarily looking at it objectively in those conversations. But anyway, leading back, just really trusting your gut and making decisions that are going to serve you best and having confidence in that, right? And then another thing that I was taught was just allowing old mentality to go away. And so we have to constantly think outside the box and be creative and allow yourself to move forward in a way that's going to make you grow. And if you continue doing all the same things all the time, how are you going to expect success or growth from that? So whether it's in business or your personal relationships and partnerships, I think just sort of looking at different ways that you can actually look within yourself to grow and not depend necessarily on others to do that.
Yeah. So the neuroscience, if I can take everything you just said and sprinkle some wisdom in here, because I love it. So what Jen's talking about is life coaching, right? And what she's talking about is what she walked away with it from, which is that inner leader that you talked about, really relying on your gut and who you are, and knowing and being in touch with that is so important for change. And so in my neuro classes, this is, if you're tuning in, you really should look at the video because it's great, but this is my notes, my mind map on the full brain potential. And so the very first place it starts is know thyself, know thy brain. And so what Jen just talked about was, well, I learned like I have to change my thinking is what I heard you say, right? I have to let go of some thoughts.
Yep.
And a coaching question that we love is what's currently trying to fall away. I think COVID is a great opportunity for people to explore that for themselves. Like what's
100%.
Right? Like what's trying to die here? What are you currently tolerating? And so the know thyself, know thy brain is the life coaching part. And then it comes to the next step in full brain potential is to manage your emotional brain. And that's where I talked about needing some help with my emotions. My mom had died. My dad had just come out of the closet and was bringing his boyfriend home for Christmas, second Christmas without mom. Brain needed a little bit of a break. And once I was able, for me, that helped me get back into control because I've worked with a life coach. It's been 7 years now. And now I have one again like in your life when you transition, right? And so then that next place on your way to full brain potential is activate peak mental performance. And that's what you're talking about that you've done is you were cruising at your job. You got the job promotion that you wanted, like you were there. And so when you do that, you're able to increase your insights and increase your creativity. And you just talked about being creative and using your brain to creatively solution seek versus problem solve.
Absolutely. I mean, I got my dream job. I experienced that for 2 years. I loved, loved, loved what I was doing, working with people. COVID happens, company gets purchased, decide to cut the particular project I'm working on. And I think, old Jen would have just been so upset and felt like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? I, how am I going to get a job in this situation? There's no job. And like, I think old Jen would have done that. And right away, I'm like, here are the things that I need to be grateful for. I have a great home. I have a great family. I have amazing people in my life. And I honestly journaled through the whole time. Every single day, I have two friends and we would write 5 things that we're grateful for. I started reading books and tuning into my hobbies and connecting with people and doing things that I would ordinarily not necessarily have quote unquote time for, right? And so I did concentrate on those things and poof, a job happened right away. I mean, I almost feel like in a way I won the lottery on that side of, my life. And I had the tools to do that, whereas I might not have had the tools to do that before. And
Yes.
then, with that still comes COVID and just dealing with life right now and keeping my eyes open to, again, things that are serving me and things that are not, and how do you grow from there? So do I have everything figured out? No way, but working towards that.
I mean, it's a journey, right? You're not supposed to. The idea that we have is that we will just, here's our map and we're going to road map out our journey and that's the way it goes, right? We make plans. God laughs, the universe
Yeah.
laughs, COVID laughs in your face, hopefully not, or you'll get sick. But what I continue to hear you say is that so this loop that you're talking about, the end loop is inner leader. First you lead yourself, then you lead others. So you were leading other people, get fired. Okay, lead myself. Gratitude journal is what I hear you talking about, right? Boom, another job comes. So people are following you, like you did the inner leader. And then the cycle repeats. And like, this is just the full brain potential wheel. And there's 4 quadrants of our brain. And one is that teacher student. And that teacher part of your brain will challenge you. As a former teacher, I was one of the good ones. So I challenged you. I asked questions. I didn't fill you with information. You were not an empty cup. Jen, 40 years on this earth, has a very nice looking cup. But you can decide to either get a bigger cup to hold more, or you can decide to, not accept what people want to pour into your cup. And that's
Absolutely.
the difference between a 20-year-old Katie and Jen or 30s Jen is your cup just continues to be added to. And you come with all that experience. And I love that you're able to make your way through this cycle in a really thoughtful way where you're not, when the emotional part of the brain, when you enter this part where, I need to manage my emotions. I'm not managing them. This time you're once again, actually, you're saying, I need help. I'm going to call a life coach. I'm going to do that, have these hard conversations. Like you're doing the things, which is just so inspiring.
Thank you. It's a different kind of support I think that you need, and not being afraid to ask for it, or not having conversations like, ooh, you know what? I'm having a really tough day today. I don't understand why I'm crying this morning, or I don't understand why I took this, the wrong way, and asking for feedback, but kind of pulling it all together and realizing that you have the capability to make great decisions, right?
Yeah. And the journey this time will be
Yeah,
so much more fun because it's
right.
not your brain. It's foreign to your brain. Your brain has done this. When I put my key in a gym that I still owned on paper and still owned on the lease, and the key didn't work because the lock was changed by someone who didn't own the gym,
Oh, geez.
that nothing's getting worse. So COVID, fired, like unemployment still hasn't showed up in my bank account. My brain is still hanging out right here in enhanced creativity and increased insights. But I got to tell you, we hung out with some managing emotions a little bit. We went, like there was a little bit of a dance, but,
Exactly.
and you've had that too, but it's great to see that this is the neuroscience behind life coaching. It is transformational, and we know that because it doesn't change when the world changes.
Absolutely. And it's introspective. I think something that I sort of heard you say without saying it is sort of being attached to the outcome sometimes. And that's where a lot of anxiety comes from. That's where a lot of fear comes from, especially for me. I think, strong girl is afraid of rejection and abandonment. And sometimes I don't have certain conversations because that's what I'm afraid of, but
Yep.
that's something I'm attracting by being afraid of that outcome. And so, it's work.
Well, that was a lot of wisdom that you just dropped right there. So much wisdom. And
my bedroom from Mr. Brainwash, it's a print that I invested in and had framed, and it says, "Wisdom comes from living." And I look at it every morning and like, wow, there's a reason why I got this.
Yes, I love that. And I'm going to start telling people, because I've lived several lifetimes. I'm going to start telling people that's why I'm so wise. That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today for this witty, wise, vulnerable, powerful conversation.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so uplifted and inspired. It's the transformation that you experienced 3 years ago was permanent. And that is why I believe in life coaching. I permanently lost 60 pounds. And although I like to yo-yo back and forth in this like fun little dance with these 10 pounds, like depending on the years, it's been a decade. Like I'm not going back, right? And you're not going back. You are resilient. You are just such a joy and a powerful woman. I like powerful. Strong comes with too many strings attached, but you are absolutely powerful. And I'm excited to see what the rest of 2020 has in store for you.
20 and 21. we're gonna give ourselves a little bit of freedom here and time.
All the doors are going to open for you. 2020 will open doors for 2021, which will open doors for 2022. Right. Jen, I have two questions I'm going to start asking for the Witty and Wise conversations. You're my second guest to ask. The first one I've always asked is, what is your superpower?
Ooh, oh my goodness, my superpower. My superpower. I think I add a lot of value to my relationships. I would say that that's my superpower. I'm always going to bring value. That it's one of my one of my own core values is to deliver value in all relationships, whether it's business, family, friendships, love. I believe in that because you have to continuously bring things to the table that are going to help others. And I would say that that's my superpower.
I 100% agree. You've added so much value to my life. Knowing that your superpower is adding value. My second question, what's next?
What's next? What's next? I have the job, I have my apartment, I have all the money that I feel like I need in life and all of that. I mean, next for me and friendships and family, I have all that. So love is next for me. And whatever that means, I have confidence that that will be the next best thing in my life is finding the right guy that is committed, shows consistency, and has all the same types of values that I have to have a great life together.
All right. You hear that, Witty and Wise, guys? Jen is putting it out there. What's next for Jen in this universe is love. And we are all on the podcast putting out the positive vibes for Jen and her love life. I am so excited for you. I can't wait to see what's next after that.
Me too.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you've made it to the end of this conversation, you are now wittier, wiser, and a part of our parliament. That's a group of owls. And we certainly give a hoot. We'd love for you to give a hoot too. You can give a hoot by giving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Podbean. You can go to YouTube as well, subscribe, give us a little review there. And then you can head on over to owlprofessionalcoaching.com or Instagram, Owl Professional Coaching, Facebook, Owl Professional Coaching, and sign up, join the Parliament for real, and join the conversation. The last Wednesday of the month is a witty and wise and relationships conversation. We're talking about the neuroscience behind wit and how you can use it to deepen your connections and conversations, and how the wisdom that you already have within you is waiting for you to apply it to your witty self. Thank you so much, Jen. Any last words you want to leave the universe with today?
Thanks for having me. I believe in you. I had the best coaching session with you last week to help me be extremely calm in a very transitional time in my life, and just sort of tackle some, immediate issues or concerns that I had with what was going on in my life. And you helped me so much. So I believe in you. I love what you're bringing to the table with witty and wise, and just taking the time to really think through how you want to live your life and how you can help sculpt others' lives too. Thank you. I think you're amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. And I love that every witty and wise conversation that you have here on Then Out is just going to impact and ripple as you continue to serve others as you have your whole life. So thank you, Jen. Thank you, listeners. We will see you every Monday. New episodes are released. If you subscribe to the newsletter, you can get it on Sundays or my YouTube channel. Thank you.